May 3rd, 2026, Khumbu Icefall, Mount Everest. A 52-year-old Nepali guide named Lakpa Dende Sherpa collapsed and died on his way to base camp. 7 days later, his name had already been replaced in the headlines. The 2026 Everest season was supposed to be historic before a single person set foot above Camp 1. Nepal had issued 492 climbing permits, the most in the history of the mountain, surpassing the record set just 2 years earlier. China had closed the north side of Everest to all foreign expeditions, which meant every climber who wanted the summit had to come through Nepal. The pressure on one mountain, one route, one team of workers was unlike anything the industry had ever seen. The summit windows would be narrow, the crowds would be record-breaking, and the whole world, it seemed, was watching. But what the crowds were not watching, what most of the English language coverage completely missed, was the story of the people keeping that route alive. Not one, not two, but 3 Nepali high-altitude workers died during this season's preparations. 3 men with names, with families, and with histories that stretch across Everest's entire modern legacy. This was not one catastrophic event. It was a chain reaction that started before the first paying client ever left base camp. This is the brutal update on the deadliest job on the 2026 Everest season. Welcome to Tourist Tragedies. To understand what happened this season, you first need to understand who the Icefall Doctors are and what they actually do, because most international coverage treats them as a footnote. Every year, before a single paying client sets foot in the Khumbu Icefall, a team of 8 specialized Sherpa climbers goes in first. They install aluminum ladders across crevasses wide enough to swallow a car. They fix kilometers of rope through a glacier that moves, not occasionally, but every single day, by about 1 meter. The terrain is not stable the way a rock face is stable. It is constantly shifting, constantly groaning, and constantly threatening to collapse. Seracs, which are towers of glacial ice the size of apartment buildings, can come down without any warning at all. No oxygen mask, no technical skill, and no rope system can save you if a serac collapses while you are standing underneath it. Out of the roughly 340 deaths recorded on Everest since 1953, a disproportionate number have occurred right here in the Icefall. The part that I find most striking is the compensation. These 8 men, who build and rebuild one of the most dangerous routes in the world every single spring, earn between $2,500 and $3,000 for the entire season. Each paying client contributes $600 directly toward funding the Icefall Doctors' work. The math is not complicated. It is simply not discussed. The 3 men who did not survive the 2026 season deserve more than a line in a broader body count. Lakpa Dende Sherpa was 52 years old, from the village of Gudel in Solukhumbu. He had spent decades navigating these mountains. He was on his way to base camp when his body gave out at 5,200 meters. Not inside the technical section, not in the death zone, just on the approach that tourists walk every year. Bijaya Ghimire Bishwakarma was 35 years old and one of the most quietly extraordinary figures in Nepali mountaineering history. He was the first person from Nepal's Dalit community, the caste the Hindu hierarchy historically labeled as untouchable, to ever summit Mount Everest. He reached the summit 4 times. He mortgaged the idea of his family's property to fund his first attempt. He started as a trekking porter, then a kitchen assistant, then an elite high-altitude guide. He was also a YouTuber who documented life at altitude for audiences across Nepal, and who once said in an interview, "I thought about how, for over 65 years, people were continually reaching the summit, but not a single person from the Dalit community had reached the top. So, I made up my mind to be the first." He died in the Khumbu Icefall on the morning of May 10th during a routine acclimatization rotation, while hundreds of paying clients were still sleeping at base camp. And then there was Phura Gyaljen Sherpa, 20 years old, the grandson of Ang Rita Sherpa, the legendary climber known as the Snow Leopard, who summited Everest 10 times without bottled oxygen. Before any of those deaths happened, the 2026 season was already in crisis, and the Icefall Doctors were at the center of it. Every season, these 8 men arrive at base camp weeks before the commercial teams. They work before dawn, when the ice is coldest and most stable. moving through darkness with headlamps and ice axes, installing ladders over crevasses that have no bottom, fixing ropes to anchors that will be ripped out and replaced within days as the glacier moves. In 2026, they made initial progress through the Icefall and had secured the route up to the rockfall point by April 8th. Then everything stopped. The reason was a single serac formation discovered on April 10th, sitting directly above the standard route to Camp 1. On April 24th, authorities declared the entire section impassable. The serac was 180 feet wide and 90 feet tall. The Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee, the organization that manages the Icefall Doctors, described it as capable of collapsing at any moment. No technology can predict when a serac falls. There is no warning system, no instrument, no algorithm that tells you the ice is about to come down. You are either there when it happens, or you are not. For 19 days, the Icefall was completely closed. 410 climbers sat at base camp waiting. Each had paid $15,000 for their permit alone, before accounting for guides, oxygen, logistics, and all the other costs that bring a standard commercial Everest expedition to between $50,000 and $100,000. The pressure on the Icefall Doctors to find a solution was enormous. They found a passage, not around the serac, not above it, beneath it. The route, when it finally opened on April 28th, passed directly under a cracked, unstable tower of ice that authorities themselves said could collapse at any time. 8 men opened that passage: Ang Rita Sherpa, Dawa Jangbu Sherpa, Tendu Sherpa, Ngima Tenji Sherpa, Phura Gyaljen Sherpa, Dawa Chiri Sherpa, Sonam Gyaljen Sherpa, and Mingma Gyaljen Sherpa. 8 names that will not appear in a single summit photo. 8 men who built a road through a collapsing glacier under a cracked ice wall for somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000. The season was back on track, 2.5 weeks behind schedule, and every climber on the mountain was now walking beneath a hanging tower of ice that nobody could promise would stay in place. May 3rd, Lakpa Dende Sherpa, 52 years old, on a trail he had walked dozens of times at 5,200 meters. He collapsed before he even reached base camp. He was part of the Indo-Tibetan Border Police expedition, a working guide, not a hobbyist. His death was the first fatality of the 2026 season. 7 days later, Bijaya Ghimire Bishwakarma was moving through the Khumbu Icefall at approximately 5 in the morning. This was an acclimatization rotation, not a summit push, just a standard movement that guides do repeatedly over a season to prepare their bodies for altitude. He felt unwell. His team turned around. He died before reaching base camp. Authorities told the press it was likely altitude sickness, possibly cardiac arrest. His body was flown to Kathmandu, and the Nepal Mountaineering Association opened their premises to the public so people could come and pay their respects. To understand what Phura Gyaljen Sherpa was doing when he died, you need to understand what carrying loads on the Lhotse face at 11 o'clock at night actually requires. The Lhotse face is a wall of blue ice approximately 1,200 meters tall, close to 4,000 feet of near vertical glaciated terrain, rising at angles between 40 and 50 degrees in its steepest sections. In darkness, at altitude, in temperatures that can drop below -20 degrees Celsius, guides carry oxygen bottles, food, tents, and equipment to stock the camps above. This is not the work that gets filmed for summit vlogs. This is the invisible infrastructure of every successful ascent. When someone raises their hands at the summit for a photograph, somewhere below Camp 4, there is a Sherpa who carried part of what made that moment possible. Phura Gyaljen left Camp 2 at around 7 in the evening on May 11th, carrying supplies higher on the mountain ahead of the summit wave. At approximately 11:20 at night, at 7,000 meters on the Lhotse face, he slipped. He fell roughly 400 meters into a crevasse between camps 2 and 3. Other climbers reached the site and pulled him out. He had sustained critical injuries to his head and body. He could not be saved. He was 20 years old. His family told reporters he had been a monk before he chose the mountain. He had returned to Nepal just before the season after working as a guide in Austria. This was only his second year on Everest. His grandfather had summited the same mountain 10 times without a single bottle of oxygen. And then the season continued. That is the part I find most extraordinary about this story. Not the deaths themselves, but what happened immediately after. 3 Nepali mountain workers died in 9 days. 3 men with families in Khumbu with histories that span the entire modern era of Himalayan guiding. And the season did not stop. May 13th, fixed ropes reached the South Col. May 17th, Kami Rita Sherpa summited Everest for a record 32nd time. May 20th, 274 climbers reached the summit from the Nepal side in a single day. A new record. 2 paying clients died, descending after summiting on May 21st. And the conversation in the international press turned immediately to overcrowding and to the queue visible in photographs stretching up the fixed ropes. Quick heads up. Every week, I drop a new update you won't find anywhere else. Please subscribe. The Nepal Mountaineering Association held a public memorial for Bijaya Ghimire Bishwakarma. Members of parliament attended. The National Dalit Commission chairman was there. The Director General of Tourism paid his respects to a man who had broken one of the most significant barriers in Nepali mountaineering history. Not once, but 4 times, despite facing structural discrimination at every step of the process. The family of Phura Gyaljen Sherpa told reporters they were beside themselves with grief. He was 20 years old, the grandson of a living legend, and he had been a monk before he decided to follow his family up the mountain. Lakpa Dende Sherpa's family received his body in Gudal village and observed the ceremonies that his community keeps. Anyone who wants to support the families of Nepali high-altitude workers who have died can find the Juniper Fund, a non-profit that provides financial support and education to these families. When you lay the sequence of events in order, a clear picture begins to form. Nepal issued 492 permits in 2026, a new record. China closed the north side, compressing every climber onto one route through one glacier, serviced by 8 Icefall Doctors earning $3,000 for the season. The Khumbu Icefall moves 1 meter every day. Every anchor, every ladder, and every fixed rope is being actively destroyed by the glacier beneath it. The men who rebuild it operate at the base of seracs that authorities describe as capable of collapsing at any time. And they do this while the permit revenue flowing into Nepal's government reaches historic highs. The mountain produced its highest single-day summit count in history on May 20th. But before a single one of those summiting climbers moved above Camp 1, 3 Nepali workers were already dead. The system that makes those summit records possible, the Icefall Doctors, the high-altitude guides, the load carriers moving through darkness at 7,000 meters, operates at the maximum level of physical danger for compensation that does not reflect that danger at all. Kami Rita Sherpa, the most experienced Everest climber alive, flew back to Kathmandu and told reporters the mountain was too crowded, that the government needed to control the numbers and focus on the quality of climbers. He was speaking about the client side of the equation. What the sequence of events in 2026 makes equally clear is that the burden on the Nepali workers who make those climbs possible has never been fully priced in. The records will be celebrated, the photographs will circulate. Lakpa Dende Sherpa, Bijaya Ghimire Bishwakarma, and Phura Gyaljen Sherpa will be footnotes in a season defined by other numbers. The 2026 Everest season did not fail by conventional measures. It was, statistically, the most successful season in the mountain's history. Record permits, record summits, record revenue. But 3 Nepali mountain workers died before any of those records were set, and by the time the story was being told, most of the coverage had already moved on. The Icefall Doctors built a road through a collapsing glacier under a cracked wall of ice for $3,000. 3 of their colleagues went to work and did not come home. Do you think Nepal's record permit model is sustainable? Or does the human cost on Nepali mountain workers demand a fundamentally different approach to how Everest is managed? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one.